Feds in New York say 500,000 migrants have already been deported, and the state's schools and shelters are turning into crime scenes and ghost towns overnight.
How does it feel? You feel good? I hope you feel good. I hope you'll sleep really well tonight.
You better start packing now.
First time since the 1960s, more immigrants are leaving the U.S. than entering.
Federal officers arrested more than 130 people in a lower Manhattan immigration courthouse building.
And if that sounds explosive, wait until you see what happens when high schools are turned into midnight migrant camps, and how those same classrooms became the stage for ICE's most controversial arrests yet.
Ladies and gentlemen, New York City just witnessed what can only be described as the most shocking eviction notice in American history. ICE and the DEA rolled in like it was WWE SmackDown, except instead of folding chairs, they brought buses and planes. Schools emptied, shelters cleared out. It was like the fire drill that never ended. We're talking 500,000 illegal migrants deported. 500,000, that's not a raid. That's a population swap. That's like taking all of Staten Island and saying, yeah, y'all gotta go. And here's the wild part. The same politicians who were bragging about being a sanctuary city suddenly looked like deer in headlights. Mayor Adams out here, looking like he just lost his fantasy football league. AOC tweeting from the sidelines, "This is inhumane." Meanwhile, regular New Yorkers are like, wait, you mean I can finally walk into my kid's classroom without stepping over sleeping bags? This wasn't just a raid. This was New York getting a wake-up call louder than a subway performer with steel drums.
Federal agents say it's the largest deportation wave in modern American history. 500,000 migrants forced out, and New York is ground zero. ICE vans are rolling through neighborhoods, courthouses, and even schools. Trump's people are making their message clearer than ever.
As a guy who spent 34 years deporting illegal aliens, I got a message to the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country in violation of federal law. You better start packing now.
The shock isn't just in the numbers, but in where the raids are happening. Some students are getting arrested in the courthouse, at visa hearings, and other teens are getting dragged right out of schools and shelters. Their families will say this statement makes no sense.
We promised in the beginning that we were going to go after the worst of the worst. You're looking at it.
But it depends where you're looking from. The Trump administration calls it law and order. Critics call it chaos. At the Row NYC hotel, once billed as a temporary shelter, rooms were raided and locked. Inside, staff say they'd been watching the same faces for 3 years.
What you saw, what you and what other workers have seen, were they very respectful of the hotel accommodation?
Well, what we saw was a lot of people who were entitled and ungrateful. And I mean, can you blame the migrants when the city of New York is giving them everything?
In other words, temporary shelters became permanent free-for-all housing. Now they're being shuttered one by one, with federal buses waiting outside. But it's not just illegal alien squatting. It's also young teens getting taken straight out of classrooms, and their parents are furious. One Bronx mother told reporters her son's high school looked like a ghost town after 3 classmates were detained.
A 20-year-old student at Brooklyn Frontiers High School, originally from Guinea, Diallo was swept up by ICE agents when he showed up for his routine immigration hearing.
We're seeing is the rest of 7-year-olds and 19-year-olds, and a mom simply was looking to give these children an opportunity for a better life.
But ICE insists this isn't random, that each and every person arrested and put on a flight to their home country had their chance, and they didn't take it. Still, the images of schools and shelters emptied in hours feel like something new, something more permanent. And if 500,000 deportations sounds shocking, wait until you see what happened when 2,000 migrants were moved into a Brooklyn high school overnight. On a freezing Tuesday morning, New Yorkers woke.
So what happened after the buses pulled away? Let me paint the picture. Teachers walked into schools like they won the lottery for the first time in years. There were actually enough chairs for every kid. No more overcrowded gyms doubling as dorms. No more classrooms looking like refugee camps. Students can finally learn math, instead of learning how to share one bathroom with 200 strangers. And the shelters, bro, they turned into ghost towns overnight. Empty bunks, silent hallways. Even the cockroaches filed a missing persons report. New York rats were seen scratching their heads like, "Ayo, where my late night buffet go?" But here's the kicker, the people most upset aren't the migrants, it's the landlords. Yep, you know, the same ones charging $5,000 a month for a 2-bedroom closet. Their cash cows just hopped on a flight and now they're out here begging for tenants like used car salesmen. And the politicians, oh, they're screaming, "This is cruel, this is unjust." But where were those voices when New Yorkers couldn't afford rent, schools were overcrowded, and taxpayers were footing the bill for hotel rooms at $500 a night? Funny how the sympathy meter only works one way. So yeah, the fallout is real, but let's be honest, the only ones shedding real tears are the activists on Twitter. The hotel chains losing millions in free government checks.
To find one of the city's largest high schools turned into a migrant shelter overnight. James Madison High in Brooklyn was cleared of students, so 2,000 people, including 500 families, could move in during a winter storm.
City officials are evacuating nearly 2,000 migrants from a controversial city shelter at Brooklyn's Floyd Bennett Field over safety concerns and the incoming storm.
Nearly 2,000 migrants are set to relocate Tuesday from the Floyd Bennett Field shelter to here, the James Madison High School in Midwood.
As you can imagine, some parents were really angry about it. Students were sent home to log onto laptops while strangers filled their classrooms.
How does it feel? You feel good? I hope you feel good. I hope you all sleep really well tonight.
It's inexcusable to do this to the students of New York City high schools.
Mr. Mayor, you knew this was gonna happen.
City officials claimed the move was about safety, fearing flooding at the original shelter site. But critics said the administration had months of warnings and ignored them. That's where Trump moved in. By dawn the next day, ICE vans were spotted outside the school. At least a dozen arrests followed, including parents with children enrolled at Madison. And while the city scrambled to justify itself, the high school crisis was just the beginning, because if classrooms could be emptied overnight, what happened when police stormed the largest migrant tent city in America? Randall's Island was supposed to be temporary housing. Instead, it became a fortress for gangs, at least until the NYPD and ICE descended. In one massive sweep, 3,000 migrants were forced out into the cold, while canines and riot squads searched every cot and bag.
The NYPD conducted a massive sweep at a migrant shelter on Randall's Island today. The operation came as a surprise for the roughly 3,000 men and women staying there.
Residents described hours of waiting outside in the hot sun, while officers dragged out contraband and impounded stolen mopeds.
Migrants make their way back into the Randall's Island tent shelter Friday evening after police evacuated all 3,000 occupants.
Inside, investigators say weapons were being smuggled in delivery bags. That's what they were looking for, at least on the surface. But the real problem is the gangs making people smuggle weapons in the first place.
There's actually a recruitment process, and this is the first time we've seen structure with Tren de Aragua, where people are recruiting these younger members.
You see, one young man admitted he was recruited into Venezuela's Tren de Aragua gang pretty much the moment he arrived.
That man, Bernardo Raul Castro Mata, after his arrest, actually identified himself as a member of Tren de Aragua. And when he got to the shelter in the city, the 19-year-old was recruited by the gang to commit robberies and even given a gun.
What was billed as a humanitarian project had morphed into a criminal hub. Turns out that residents had nicknamed it the Death Shelter.
Migrants we spoke to say they sleep with one eye open, fearing they will be attacked.
The raid proved the shelters weren't just unsafe, they were operational bases for gangs. And as agents spoke to people like Bernardo, they realized who really controlled New York's shelters.
Now let's zoom out. What does this all mean for the bigger picture? Simple sanctuary cities just got exposed. The feds basically walked in, flexed, and said, "Nice little sanctuary you got here. Be a shame if we actually enforce the law." And boom, 500,000 people are on the first flight out. For New Yorkers, it's a mixed bag. Half the city is celebrating like it's New Year's Eve. They're lighting fireworks, posting "Thank you ICE" memes, and finally breathing. Because just Subway doesn't smell like a Greyhound station, the other half they're marching, holding signs, and screaming "Abolish IC," while live streaming from their rent-controlled lofts. But here's the truth bomb. You can't pack 500,000 people into schools, shelters, and hotels. 10x shocked when Uncle Sam comes knocking. That's not compassion, that's chaos. And the reality is this was just the first wave. You think this was big, imagine wave 2. Imagine if ICE decides to run this playbook in Chicago, LA, or Philly. This is the beginning of a national shift. A message that says, laws matter, borders matter, and pretending otherwise. That experiment just failed in real time. So buckle up, America, because if New York was the test run, the next few months they're gonna be wild. New York just learned the hard way that you can't play sanctuary city forever. What do you think? Was this raid overdue or overkill? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that like button, and hit subscribe for more Politically Animated, where we roast the news until it's well done. Stay tuned, fam. The comedy ain't slowing down.